Podcasting Q&A for August 7th, 2017. I'm Daniel J. Lewis from the audacitytopodcast.com. Thank you for joining me. If you have a question about podcasting while I'm recording this, then please comment below this video. Or if you're watching the replay, then please join me live on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern at the audacitytopodcast.com/live. I'm going to keep this a little bit short today unless some questions come up in the comments while I'm recording this, because I want to get back to working to make Podcaster Society reopen, but that's not the thing I want you to do. The thing I want you to do today while you're watching this, especially if this is on or before August 20th, is go to the audacitytopodcast.com/themessengers and pre-order that. This is the podcast documentary made by Chris Kremitzos and several others from Florida, and this is an excellent representation of the podcasting space, because I believe that anyone can share a message to change the world, and podcasting is the best way to do that. We are messengers, and that's why this documentary is called The Messengers, a podcast documentary. It's very well produced. The content is fantastic. It's entertaining as well. And as a podcaster, I love seeing how they represented us really well. It's not all the LA podcasters or the New York podcasters or the public radio podcasters. It's not all the entrepreneur podcasters. It's also not all the podcasters you've never heard of. These are people who have been podcasting, some of them for a couple years, some of them since the beginning of podcasting. This is an excellent way to support the podcasting industry and see some really cool stuff. It's only a few dollars in the United States. It's priced a little bit differently in other countries because of currencies, conversions, and all of that. But please go to the audacitytopodcast.com/themessengers. I'll say that again, the audacitytopodcast.com/themessengers, and pre-order your copy over there. And if you pre-order it, please email me, feedback@theaudacitytopodcast.com. Email me a screenshot of either your order confirmation screen, the pre-order button showing that you've already clicked on it, or some kind of confirmation that you get either inside of your account in Apple or maybe an email confirmation they give you later. But I want to see that you've pre-ordered it, and I will enter you in a drawing to win a 1-year membership to Podcaster Society. Or if you're not a podcaster yet, then you can choose one of my podcasting courses that are currently available. There's a Zoom H6 and SEO for Podcasters course as well. And you can have that for free in this drawing if you're randomly selected among those who pre-order their copy of The Messengers. So go to the audacitytopodcast.com/themessengers. I know, /themessengers. That sounds rather violent, but it's not. You can be nice about it. The audacitytopodcast.com/themessengers. And pre-order your own copy of this excellent podcast documentary. All right, I've received 2 questions that I'm going to answer in this, and may also answer any other questions that come in the chat during the recording. First, Jon Hagadorn from the 1001 Heroes podcast asked, what are the highest and lowest months for listenership in podcasting? Well, here's a very lawyer answer. It depends. It really does depend on not really the individual podcast, but the industry that podcast is part of, the niche that podcast is part of. There are these cycles that podcast listenership and consumption go through, and it really depends on what kind of podcast it is, what the topic is, and what kind of cycles go along with that topic. For example, with let's say a lawn and garden podcast, you're going to see that summer will probably be higher for consumption than winter, because summer is when more people are out there working with their lawns and gardens and are probably able to listen to podcasts. Now, the opposite could be true. Like, look at Horse Radio Network. This is a podcast network from Glenn the Geek, who talks about all things horses and has a whole network of different shows that are talking about horses. So during the summertime and spring and, during good weather time, their listenership is down because their audience is out with their horses. But during winter, their listenership goes up because their audience is inside, not so much outside with their horses. So they seem to have more time listening. And it could be completely different for other industries. In general, though, December And early January, so the Christmas holiday, New Year's holiday, Thanksgiving time, that era, that time period, about a month in there or so from about the beginning of December to the beginning of January, that tends to be the lowest consumption period for many, but not all podcasters. And that's because that's when a lot of people are busy with Christmas stuff. They are visiting family and friends. They are taking time off work. So maybe they have less time in the car to listen to podcasts, fewer commutes. Maybe they're then listening to fewer podcasts during those times. However, some other podcasts will find a higher consumption rate during those exact same times because it means people aren't at work as much, or because maybe they're spending more time in the car traveling with family to see family for the holidays and such. So while December is, I would say, the most common low point for podcasts, it's not necessarily going to be the case for your show. It really depends on your audience. What is their schedule like? So what can you do with this information? Does it mean you should not podcast during those times when the audience is down, or does it mean you should podcast even more? That's really up to you. For example, with our TV show fan podcast, oncepodcast.com, we podcast about the TV show Once Upon a Time. That's a seasonal TV show. It has 3-month breaks during summer and during winter. So during these hiatuses, between the first and second season of the show, we did continue podcasting, I think almost weekly or bi-weekly. And yes, our listenership was down. But our audience really appreciated that we continued podcasting during the hiatus because they're not getting content from their favorite TV show. They were, however, getting content from us. So it kept feeding their fandom. It fed their passion to continue the podcast during that time. In more recent years, we've not been so rigorous with our schedule to publish every single week or every other week during summer. We'll publish an episode when we can, when there's something actually worth talking about, like spoilers or big news or a DVD review or something like that. And the audience enjoys that, but still, our listenership is down. That's for us. For you, it could be completely different. So with this information, you have to decide what you think works best for you and the best thing to serve your audience. It could even be that maybe during these busy months or busy weeks, whatever your schedule is like for your particular audience, maybe you release shorter episodes. So instead of doing an hour-long episode, you release a 10-minute episode. So then it's easier for people to consume who are busy during those holiday times or whatever the downtime is for your audience. But you're still releasing content, so it's still feeding their passions. And what that cycle looks like for your show really depends on your industry and on your audience. So thank you, Jon, for that question. Pete asked a question, and I see we've also got a question in the chat room I'll get to in a minute. Pete asked, what's the best way to make a mono MP3 from a Zoom H4n Pro recorded in stereo? So many of these recorders, the Zoom H4n especially, have the option to record multiple input channels, but like with the Zoom H4n, it has 2 XLR inputs, and if you plug in 2 separate microphones and record directly into the H4n, its only option for recording is in stereo. You can do a mono mix down, but it gives you still a stereo track, which then you lose the benefit of having separated tracks. So if you record into the H4n, you plug in 2 XLR microphones directly into it, you'll end up with one person in the left side, one person in the right side. That's not the way you want to publish it. And it will sound a little weird maybe to listen to it while you're recording it that way, but you'll end up with a stereo file that is like that. So what you want to do is in your audio editing software, there's a feature to split a stereo track into mono tracks, and that's what you want to use. In Adobe Audition, you right-click on the stereo file, and you choose, I think it's convert to mono tracks or something like that, split to mono tracks. In Audacity, when you drag in your stereo wave file or stereo MP3 file, whatever came from your recorder, in the drop-down menu that's on that actual track, so right around where the track name is, click that drop-down menu, and there's an option there to split the tracks to mono. It will look close to the same in Audacity, but you'll notice now the tracks are separate. They're also now completely centered. They're mono. So when you export that, you'll get a mono file. And also, you won't have to deal with the voices in separate ears, but you still maintain your control over the separate voices. So you can raise one voice without affecting the other. Whereas if you did a mono mix down, either in the H4n or in Audacity or other software, then you're losing that separation and you lose the ability to change one voice while leaving the other unchanged or change it separately. Other software will probably have similar features where you can split something out into separate mono tracks. But those are the two most popular pieces of software for podcasting. And then the other thing that you can do, like if you bring in stereo music, that you don't need to split it into separate tracks. There are a couple ways that you can make a mono file. One is in your software to mix everything down to mono. There might be a feature for that, like in Audacity, there's that feature. The other thing is when you're exporting your file, you may have an option that forces that file export to be in mono, and that would mix things down for you, and that would work as well. So thank you for the question, Pete. Now, in the chat room, Robert Parkinson asked, what is the best plan when advertising on Facebook? I have not advertised on Facebook yet because I'm just so busy with other things. I really need someone else to manage this. But there are some things to keep in mind with Facebook. So if you are wanting to promote your podcast, do not link to an individual file, like a single episode file. Maybe not even link to a single episode page. The best thing to do if you're going to advertise is link to content that people would want. Make a video that can go along with your ad if possible, and target it to specific types of people. You'll really have to test and test, tweak things and test again, and invest maybe $10 or $15 per day or more to see what's working, what's not working. So actually building a plan for advertising your podcast on Facebook, I really recommend go find a Facebook advertising expert and learn from them, or maybe even consider hiring them to set things up for you. But think of what people actually want to see. People who may not be familiar with your podcast. So don't make your ad simply subscribe to the such and such podcast. No one really cares. Make your ad something that people will care about. Make it visual. Make it relevant to them. So make sure you're targeting them in a way that's relevant. That could be maybe you have a video gaming podcast. So maybe you want to go stereotypical and you target only males between a certain age range. Maybe you have a more creative podcast, so you want to focus on females in only a certain age range. You can also focus your Facebook targeting to other things, like only people who are a member of this group. So if you know that a particular group has your ideal audience, you could advertise to the people who are members of that group. And similar things like that give you great segmenting power. So that's what I recommend there. And link to something that they actually would want, and track your success on this. Work things out that you have a way to see how many people are clicking through. And then once they arrive on your website, how many of them are from there clicking to subscribe to your podcast or listen to a particular episode that maybe you've been promoting. That's it for the Q&A for today. I know it's very short, but I want to get back to working on reopening Podcaster Society. Remember, pre-order your copy of The Messengers and send me a screenshot, some kind of proof of purchase, and I'll enter you in a drawing to possibly win a 1-year membership to Podcaster Society or one of my courses of your choice if you haven't started your podcast. That's over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/themessengers to pre-order it in iTunes. And please do that soon. It costs about the price of a cheap burger. So please pre-order your copy of The Messengers and support the incredible messaging power that we get in podcasting. That's it for today. I'm Daniel J. Lewis from theaudacitytopodcast.com. Thanks for watching.